Joining us now is Dr. Jamie Taweel, an internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates as we begin a new year. And people maybe hopefully are going back to their primary care providers once again for those annual checkups. Dr. Taweel, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me as always. How are things?
Doing well over here. How are you doing?
Doing well. Keeping busy.
Yeah, good to hear that you're keeping busy, especially as we get into a new year. And after the last few years, of course, seeing many in the medical industry talk about people being more hesitant to go to their doctors. That's certainly changed over the last year or so as people have been more comfortable to get back and out into their community and back to some semblance of regular life as the pandemic has wound down in some regards. But just how important is it as we're getting into a new year for people as they're focusing on their health and as they're focusing on their family's health as well, to get those regular checkups? How much of an impact can that have on someone's regular health, overall health?
Oh, definitely a huge impact. I mean, that's something that's always going to be recommended. I've said it a million times, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So anything that we can do to get on top of any potential diseases that are brewing are definitely going to be things that would be recommended. So in other words, getting a regular routine checkup, it's not just about coming in saying hi, making sure everything's okay. We're checking everything. We're checking for age appropriate cancer screenings that we can get in front of. We're checking you for diabetes. We're checking cholesterol and your risk for heart attacks. We're also trying to make sure that you're, having the conversations that people should be having. Are you having an appropriate diet? Are you exercising? Any questions that you have for your physician that you may not know? These are all things we want to address. So those are things that are going to definitely be recommended. Your yearly preventative, checkups and things to that effect. You never just want to see a doctor when you need to. You want to see one before you need to. That's hopefully the point that we're trying to get through.
And just how often should these be happening? We talk about it, it's beginning of the year, it's a new time it's time to kind of sort of renew your goals for the next year and think about your health as many do at this time. But is there a certain timeline of how often people at various ages should be seeing their primary care provider?
Absolutely. Above the age of 18, I mean, I would like to recommend you get seen at least once a year. If you're young and healthy and have no medical concerns, a yearly checkup shouldn't be a bad thing. And if you're getting a little bit older and you have other medical problems, your doctor typically will set the timeline for how often you should be seen. For conditions such as diabetes, you want to be seen every 3 months to check those levels to make sure that you're having adequate control. You want to also keep checking in to make sure that your weight's not spiraling out of control or that it is being controlled. We want to know that the things that we're recommending are actually working. I usually like to say that I would probably like to see you at least as much as a dentist would. So I think bi-yearly exams are, routine checkup after the 6 month mark with a yearly physical, always a good idea.
And for parents too, how often should those checkups be happening for kids, especially as they're developing and they're exposed to a variety of different germs and illnesses through school and through social events? How often should they be getting checkups with their primary care provider?
Well, I'm not a physician, but I imagine that this timeline would be essentially the same, at least yearly before school starts. And at a minimum, I would suggest maybe a 6 month checkup in the halfway point of the year. However, that might be different for your pediatrics. Please forgive me.
We're joined by Dr. Jamie Taweel from Grand River Medical Associates, internal medicine specialist. On today's edition of the Megacast, you can find more information and get in contact with them at grandrivermedical.com, grandrivermedical.com, their website for more information. And as we talk about getting back out into the communities a little bit more in the past year, and certainly that will continue in 2023 if all goes well. At the same time, this particular season, typically the time of the year we're seeing flu cases increase, certainly pre-pandemic when people were more active. And now we're seeing two strains of the flu with COVID-19 and also RSV in our schools. So at this time, how much of an issue are respiratory viruses in comparison to last year as people were starting to kind of get back out into regular life, and certainly looking at metrics pre-pandemic, as that would be the most accurate way to look at now versus then as people are back out and about?
Well, definitely. Things are a little bit crazier because there's no longer any restrictions that we had like we had with COVID. So a lot of those other things that weren't really hitting us as hard. But now people are out, people are doing their thing. We recently had the holidays kind of come through here. So we had a bump in some of those cases. Flu came a little bit early this year. And we're starting to see that drop off just a bit. I'm seeing still a lot of COVID blowing around, but a lot of more milder cases. So the triple threat that we're getting hit with is COVID, flu, and RSV. And all three of those can really impact people. So it's just, you got to be more cautious as best you can. RSV can be a little bit more contagious as it, not more contagious, but more easily spread because it can survive longer on inanimate surfaces so that someone coughs on something and gets touched later. That's how it can be spread, as opposed to flu and COVID, which are basically air droplets that are transmitted through the air. So things are a little bit dicey. And now that we're having multiple things hit us at once, whereas a few years back we were only dealing with really COVID as the big gun, it's getting on people.
And even as we're seeing the regular flu season come through, and you talk about all these different respiratory illnesses and other illnesses that we're seeing a little bit more commonly now, or we're hearing, or we've certainly heard more commonly about over the last several years, given the case of the pandemic. This year, we're hearing a lot about different strains of the flu virus, particularly A and B, have been spreading around a lot of late. Is this something typical that we see various strains of the seasonal flu year in and year out, or is this something atypical from what we've seen in the past? Because really, for me, it's the first time I've been hearing pretty frequently about different strains of the flu going around.
No, I think that this does happen. It's not as common, but it does happen. And, oftentimes the flu vaccine is our best guess to what the flu will be. And then we get flu coming through and there's different strains. So this is typical for the course. I think it's just we're a little bit more alert. The antenna are up because of COVID, and everybody's starting to get really concerned about these respiratory viruses that we can get because they are really kind of hitting us heavy this year. But yeah, there are different strains of the flu that go around just as much as there are different strains of COVID, and these things do happen. And getting the vaccine definitely does help prevent those things. Um, it, Unfortunately, we're trying to be as one step ahead as we can, and we're doing a pretty solid job. The flu vaccine is pretty effective this year, and it's been reducing a lot of illnesses. So
You can find more information on seasonal flu and the various strains, as well as other information about ways you can battle the flu, prevent the flu, and what you should be doing depending on your symptoms in terms of treatment by going to cdc.gov/flu. We're joined by Dr. Jamie Taweel on today's edition of the Megacast from Grand River Medical Associates. More information and get in contact with them, grandrivermedical.com. Dr. Taweel, before we let you go, anything else that we should be keeping an eye out for or should be keeping on our mind right now about our overall health from frontline primary care providers like yourself?
absolutely. The thing I want to talk to people about is a lot of people gained a lot of weight during COVID. I am no exception to that. I want people to start trying their hardest to get back on track because the next thing is always going to be there. I mean, I'm not suggesting that it's a doom and gloom thing, but we're always going to be hit with illnesses. That's what we are. That's who we are as people. So trying your hardest to be the most healthy that you can get so that you don't get hit with those illnesses as aggressively as others could be would be ideal. Routine checkups, conversations with your physician about weight loss, things to that effect, making sure that you're adopting a healthy diet, making sure that you're trying to exercise, making sure that you're eating right, all the fun stuff. But basically, a best defense is a good offense. So, and the best way to do that is to just make sure that your health is intact, checking with your doctor to see if you have any underlying conditions that need to be immediately addressed. And if not, at least just maintaining a healthy weight and lifestyle. Don't smoke, all the fun stuff.
More information and to get in contact with Dr. Taweel and the team at Grand River Medical Associates at grandrivermedical.com or call them 248-264-6169. Dr. Taweel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you as always. Always a pleasure to be on. I appreciate the time to talk.